scary story. The old legend of the obyrke was considered simply a scarecrow for newcomers at the camp. But when a quiet scraping whisper sounded near the last house that night, it was hunger. Lenka and Katya realized he had come for them. So Katyukha, are you ready for 3 weeks of absolute freedom and adventure? Lena nudged her friend as soon as she jumped off the bus. Of course. Katya was calmer by nature, more thoughtful and observant. She looked around, holding the strap of her backpack. Only here it feels strangely wild after the city. The forest is like a wall. So much the better. Lenka giggled, already spotting familiar faces from last year's shift in the distance. That means there will be more secrets, more mysteries. The main thing is that the local mosquitoes don't burn us to death before we can figure it all out. Otherwise they talk like sparrows here. You're always telling horror stories. Katya smiled, but she still shuddered, imagining giant mosquitoes. Their group, the third in a row, was housed in cabin number 7. It stood at the very edge of the campgrounds, its back wall almost touching the dense dark forest edge. The cabin was one of the oldest, but that made it even cozier. Yes, cozy, Katya drawled, throwing her backpack on the bed by the window. The view from the cabin is special. We're looking right into the mouth of a forest monster. It'll probably be creepy at night. Oh, don't be such a bore. Lena was already energetically unpacking her bag. She was hanging bright t-shirts over the back of her bed. But look, what a plus. No one will be screaming under the window at night, like in the central cabins. And the air is wonderful. Let's go find the cafeteria quickly. The first days at camp flew by, like one bright sunny dream. Life at camp followed a strict schedule, but it wasn't the least bit depressing. However, after about a week, strange things started happening. Len, did you hear that last night? Katya whispered one morning as they walked along the path to the dining hall. What exactly? How Sashka Petrov from the 3rd detachment snored so loudly that the windows rattled. I definitely heard that. No, it wasn't snoring. It was like someone was scratching, clawing at the wall right under our window. I even approached quietly, but there was no one there. Only the shadows of the pine trees. Such eerie shadows, long and gnarled, as if arms were reaching out. Come on, Kaska. It was probably some kind of animal. A squirrel jumping along the branches. Maybe some nocturnal bird. Who knows what might be prowling around in the forest at night. It's a forest after all. Wildlife. Katya shook her head at the sight of a squirrel with claws like those right up the wall. The wild animal explanation wasn't very reassuring. A couple of days later, Fluffy vanished without a trace. A large, fluffy ginger cat, everyone's favorite and the pride of Aunt Zena, the cook. Fluffy truly ruled the camp. He roamed freely, basked in the sun near the dining hall, begging children and adults for treats, and sometimes even allowed himself to be petted. And then he simply vanished. In the morning, he wasn't found in his usual spot by the dining hall steps. Aunt Zena, a kind, plump woman, usually so smiling, was wandering around in tears. Children from all groups, including Lena and Katya, spent several hours combing the entire campground. Fluffy vanished, as if he'd vanished into thin air. That evening, around the traditional campfire, the atmosphere was noticeably tense. Vidka from the first group, known for his love of scary stories, glanced around at everyone. Do you know who really wanders around here at night? He asked, lowering his voice to a mysterious whisper. The younger children immediately moved closer to the counselors, their eyes shining with curiosity and fear. So who is it? Mutant squirrels or ninja hedgehogs? Lenka called out, trying to defuse the situation. Worse. Viska Cortina paused, savoring the effect she had produced. Much worse. It's Irka. Who? Several voices, including Katya, asked in chorus. Irka, Vidka repeated slowly and emphatically. The local evil spirit. Old people in a nearby village say he lives somewhere in the field, near the forest. He sleeps during the day, and as soon as it gets dark, he goes hunting, moving silently, and he's always hungry. Hunger is what drives him. What kind of nonsense is this? Lenka snorted. Do you even believe that? You probably made it up yourself. But Katya listened, holding her breath. Her eyes were wide. It's not completely nonsense, Len. Pasha, his face creased, suddenly intervened. He smiled sadly, looking at the flames. It's a local horror story. A very old legend. My grandmother told me about it when I was a child. It's from these parts. They say the Irka is an evil spirit that feeds on fear. It's drawn like a magnet to places where people are afraid, where they quarrel, where someone is left alone in the dark and feels defenseless. The greater the fear, the more satisfying the Irka is. And they also say that Pasha suddenly hesitated, as if hesitant to continue. What are they saying? Pash, come on, finish. Katya couldn't help but say, her voice shaking. They say that if he gets really hungry, if there's little fear around him, or he becomes accustomed to it, then simply scaring you isn't enough for him. He needs other food. He might even steal something or someone. They say he approaches quietly at first, scratching, checking to see if you're asleep, if you're afraid of him, listening to your breathing, your heart. Enough. Stop this immediately, said Marina, the counselor, a strict girl who is responsible for discipline at the camp. Vitya, Pasha, I forbid you to scare the children. How many times have I told you? Irka doesn't exist. Those are just stupid fairy tales for tourists and impressionable children. The words about hungry Irka, who scratches at the window, feeds on fear, and can drag you away if he gets really hungry, stuck in the heads of many children, especially Katya. That night, Lena woke up to Katya quietly sobbing. She was crying into her pillow. Why are you crying? Lena whispered sleepily. I'm scared, Len. Katya's voice was shaking. I think he's somewhere here. Very close. Outside the window. Who? Irka. Katya. What are you doing? Seriously? It's just a scare story. Vidka lied so we'd all shit ourselves with fear, and Pasha played along. They always do that. And the sounds we heard. The edge of the forest. It was gone. And the fact that our house was the one at the very end. Pasha said he was checking on those sleeping by the window. Pasha also joked, to make it scarier. That's it, Katyukha. Go to sleep. Come on. Lena turned to the wall, trying to get back to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. Now she too listened to every rustle of the night. Every crack of a dry branch, every distant hoot of an owl, every rustle of leaves made her heart clench anxiously. She remembered again that quiet, insistent scraping from last night. Maybe Katya was right. Maybe it wasn't a hedgehog or a squirrel at all. The next few days passed in a strange tension. During the day, under the bright sun, everything was almost as usual. The laughter of children on the playgrounds, the splashing of water in the lake, the cheerful commands of the counselors. But as soon as the sun began to set, as soon as the trees' long shadows fell, the camp seemed to quiet down. Conversations grew quieter, laughter less frequent. Everyone tried to stick together in groups. No one wanted to be alone anymore, even for a minute, especially in the twilight. One evening after a late dinner, Lena and Katya lingered a bit in the dining room. They had volunteered to help Aunt Zina, who was still grieving for her little one. By the time the girls finally finished and went outside, it was almost dark. The path to their little house seemed deserted and slightly ominous. The streetlights were just beginning to come on, picking out sections of the path from the darkness. I don't feel quite right today, Lena, Katya admitted in a quiet voice, clinging closer to her friend. It was somehow quiet, too quiet and dark. To be honest, me too, Lena answered honestly. Let's walk faster. They quickened their pace, almost breaking into a run. Suddenly Lena tripped over something hard on the path, and almost fell. Damn, what's that lying there? She bent down to peer through the fur in the dim light. It wasn't a branch or a stone. On the ground lay a small, neatly gnawed bone, like a chicken leg, but strangely too thin. Next to the bone, stuck to the damp earth, lay a small tuft of fur, exactly like the one that belonged to the missing cat, Pushka. Oh my, Katya whispered under her breath, grabbing Lena's hand. Lenka, that's Pushka's bone. His. I don't know. They look very similar. Let's get out of here quickly. They ran to their little house, practically flew inside, slammed the flimsy wooden door behind them, and pressed their backs against it. Len. It's definitely him. Irka. Katya's whole body was shaking. Her zombs were knocking right here, on the path next to our house. You're crazy, Katya. Don't say that. Lena was scared to death herself, but she tried to maintain the last of her composure. Maybe it was a fox after all, or a stray dog. Was it what that had run in from the village? The fox had left a gnawed bone right on the path. Lena, he's here. He's somewhere very close. He's watching us, and he's hungry. Pasha said he would if he got really hungry. That night, they didn't try to sleep. The fear was too strong, too real. They plugged the large crack under the door with an old felt blanket, and pulled the curtain tightly. On the window, they pushed their beds together and sat on one, hugging each other for courage. The girls shuddered at every sound. The silence no longer seemed mysterious to them. It was ominous, tense. It seemed the very air in the room was thick with fear. And then, in this tense silence, they heard the same sound they'd heard before. But now it seemed much louder, more distinct. A quiet but insistent scraping against the wooden wall outside the house. Scratch, scrape, pause, scratch, scrape. It was coming from very close to the window, just below the sill, as if someone were scraping small but sharp claws along the wood. The friends froze, afraid to breathe, afraid to move. The scraping stopped for a moment. A silence fell, even more terrifying than the sound itself. And then they heard a whisper, low, hoarse, almost voiceless. It seemed to be coming from right under the window, seeping through the cracks in the old frame. Hungry. Katya quietly sobbed and covered her mouth with her hand to keep from screaming. Lena felt an icy chill run down her spine, and the hair on the back of her neck seemed to stand on end. Irka. Katya babbled through her tears. Her eyes were huge. The scraping started again, this time more insistently, as if someone small with claws was trying to find a crack in the wall, cling to it, climb higher to the window. What should we do? Lena whispered, frantically looking around the dark room. I don't know. Maybe I should scream. Call for help? Who will hear us? Everyone's been asleep for a long time. Their counselors are a long way from the cabin. He feeds on fear. Katya remembered Pasha's words with horror. If we scream in terror, we'll only make him stronger. Sipla's whisper was heard again from outside, this time even closer. And what do you want? It seemed right above the windowsill. Hungry. And then they heard a light but distinct tapping on the window glass. The girls huddled together in terror. Lena, do we have any food? Katya suddenly realized. Maybe he just wants food? Regular food. Cookies. Exactly. I still have a packet of cookies in my nightstand. Do you think he wants cookies? Katya whispered doubtfully. I don't know. But we have to do something. Maybe he's just really hungry. What if he smells food? Let's try it. It can't get any worse. Lena carefully, trying not to make a sound, slid off the bed and tiptoed to her nightstand. She groped for the rustling packet of cookies in the darkness. Her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely open it, scattering a few crumbs on the floor. Meanwhile, the knocking on the window became more insistent and demanding. What should I do? Throw the cookies out the window, Lena whispered, returning with Katya's pack. It's closed, and I'm not opening it for anything. What if he just climbs in here? Then maybe we can squeeze it through the door. There's a crack there. We plugged it with the blanket. Come on. As if hearing their desperate whispers, the scraping sounds and quiet knocking moved from the window to the door. Let's try it. She broke off a few cookies and, trying to breathe as quietly as possible, walked to the door. Breathing heavily, she carefully pulled back the edge of the old blanket and slid the cookies under the door. The scraping behind the door stopped immediately. A chomping sound was heard outside, quiet but very fast. Greedy, with a smacking sound. Then there was silence again. A moment later, something dark, thin, and flexible, like a long dry finger, with a black claw at the end, or a gnarled, dry branch, poked through the door. It groped on the floor right in front of Lena. Hungry. Lena, overcoming her fear, quickly pushed another cookie through. More rapid, greedy chomping followed. They fed him almost the entire pack, one after another. Every time the chomping didn't subside for a moment, the shop demanded more. The friends sat on the floor, their backs pressed against the cold wall. They listened to the eerie feeding sounds of the unknown creature right outside their door. When there were only 2 cookies left in the pack, Lena whispered to the crack under the door. That's it, no more. The cookies are gone. The girls held their breath, not knowing what to expect. Do you think he's gone? Katya asked with a horn of hope. Instead of an answer, the same simple whisper came from outside, but now it clearly carried notes of anger, resentment, and obvious disappointment. Hungry. And then there was a bang on the door from the outside. Not very hard, but noticeable. So much so that the door shook. Then again, harder, as if someone small but unexpectedly heavy was leaning on it with all his weight. He was trying to knock it down. He's breaking in. He's trying to get in, Katya shouted, jumping to her feet. Hold the door. Help, Lena commanded, also jumping up. The two of them threw all their strength at the flimsy wooden door from the inside, bracing their feet on the floor, trying to hold it open from the outside. The rhythmic pressure continued. There was the scraping of claws on wood, dull thuds, and the same chilling whisper, repeating like a mantra. Hungry, hungry. They didn't know how long it lasted. Minutes stretched into an endless, nightmarish eternity. The muscles in their arms and legs ached with tension. Their palms sweated and scraped against the cool wood. Horror mingled with utter despair. They felt the door gradually give way, the wood creaking pitifully, and the latch was about to fly out. Suddenly, Lena, without taking her eyes off the door, noticed movement near the window out of the corner of her eye. The thin curtain fluttered slightly. She froze, chilled by a new wave of terror. Katya, look, the window. Katya, slowly, afraid to tear herself away from the door, turned her head. The curtain moved noticeably again, and from underneath it, on the street side, a hand slowly reached out onto the inner windowsill. No, it wasn't a human hand. Something long, thin, very dark, almost black, with incredibly long, sharp claws. This something moved slowly, as if probing the surface, along the windowsill, scratching the paint. It was looking for any way to get inside. At that moment, the pounding on the door grew even louder. The wood rattled somewhere near the hinges. It won't hold. Lena, it's going to break, Katya croaked. And then an almost insane idea struck Lena. A stupid one, but the only one that came to her mind. A flashlight. My flashlight is in my backpack. Pasha said that evil spirits are afraid of bright light or fire. Without letting go of the door for a second, she somehow twisted and tried to reach her backpack with one hand. Her fingers frantically fumbled over the fabric, found the zipper, and slid inside. Got it. Catch it. Shine it on the window. Quick, she shouted to her friend, tossing her the flashlight. Katya caught it with trembling hands. She let go of the door for a moment, which Lena immediately, and with difficulty held on. Shaking all over, she fumbled for the power button, and aimed a bright, sharp beam of light directly at the window, at the dark, cobwebby paw on the windowsill. The thin paw instantly twitched, as if electrocuted, and darted away with incredible speed, disappearing behind the curtain. From outside in the darkness beyond the window, came a short but incredible, bronze scream. At that very moment, the pressure on the door ceased. A sudden deafening silence fell. The friends stood in the middle of the room, breathing heavily, not believing their salvation. Lena still pressed her shoulder against the door. Katya clutched the flashlight tightly, keeping its beam trained on the drawn window. "I think Irka's gone," Katya finally whispered. Her voice still trembled. Lena listened intently. Silence. Not a rustle, not a scrape, not a whisper. It seemed he had gone. The light had frightened him. They didn't dare open the door or draw back the curtain until dawn. They sat there for the rest of the night, their beds pushed together, hugging each other, the flashlight still shining. Only when the first rays of morning sun peeked through the cracks did they feel incredible relief. Lena carefully approached the door, listened again, and slowly, cautiously, pulled back the latch. No one was there. However, traces of the night's visit remained. Scattered cookie crumbs lay on the ground near the threshold, and several deep, fresh scratches were visible on the door itself, especially at the bottom. They were clearly made by sharp claws. There were also scratches on the wooden frame, and the paint on the windowsill near the window. That same day, Lena and Katya approached the counselors, and trying to speak as calmly as possible, begged to be transferred to any other cabin, closer to the center of the camp. They said they were terrified to sleep after all these stories, that they had nightmares, that they heard strange sounds and couldn't fall asleep. They said something about Irka, about the hoarse whispers of hunger, about the cookies by the door, and the clawed paw on the windowsill. Of course they kept quiet. Who would have believed them? They were transferred without further questions to cabin number 3, where 2 spaces just happened to be available. The rest of the shift passed relatively peacefully for Lena and Katya. They lived in the new cabin, but never again lingered outside after sunset, and tried to stay close to each other. Any sharp sound in the darkness, any strange rustling sound, made them flinch and look around anxiously. They tried not to talk about that terrible night, even among themselves, but they both knew it wasn't a dream. It was real. It was Irka. As the old bus took them back to the stuffy city, Lena stared out the windows for a long time at the rapidly receding camp. She knew that somewhere out there, in the deepest thicket, something small, dark, clawed, and eternally hungry was still hiding. "Do you think he'll ever come back?" Katya asked quietly, sitting next to her. "I don't know, Katya, but we don't have any more cookies for him. Irka had been hungry once, and he would definitely be hungry again. It was only a matter of time."